Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final podcast for our podcast series From and On Prisons, a podcast in prison literature. This is a concluding episode where we recap major facets of prison literature which we've discussed throughout our show. In this podcast, we first talked about the recurring themes in prison literature.
The first such theme that we explored was the theme of loneliness and isolation. While loneliness and isolation is supposed to lead to moral reform, we saw how this goal was based on a faulty assumption that everyone has something to regret about in the first place, and that the regret stops once the person has repented. The second theme that we explored were the power structures and social strata. We saw how a microcosm of society developed within prison, with the exception that there was an overrepresentation of minorities within the prison walls. Privileged classes have it better in prison compared to oppressed classes of people who face more brutality and even discrimination. Prisoners are also classified into separate classes based on the offenses they have committed. People accused of crimes like rape were specifically targeted.
Yeah. Another theme which we took up was the abuse of power, brutality, and violence inside prison. In this, we first looked at the torture by guards and the violence amongst inmates, which has been present in almost all works which we examined. This tells us that violence as a fact is omnipresent in prisons, regardless of where the prison itself is, and it defines the experiences of every prisoner. Secondly, we saw how there are many reasons for such violence, which can range from extracting crucial information to simple expression of frustration by the guards. We also noted that special care is taken to ensure marks of the torture aren't visible. After this, another theme which we explored was the resistance to the aforementioned abuse. So, writing also acts as a resistance to this abuse, and we explored how writing is a form of mental rebellion in a way because it allows the author to regain control of their mind and reverse the apparatus of surveillance. We saw how Vole Soyinka said, "This creature is irrelevant, he is not real, I represent reality," when he was referring to the prison guard. So, this shows how prisoners use literature to regain control of their lives.
The fifth theme we spoke about was visiting day. So in popular media, visiting day is shown as something which is unequivocally positive and that it doesn't have any negative sides at all. For example, we saw an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine where this was shown. However, when once we read more, we uncovered the humiliation suffered by prisoners, both in forms of strip searching and also the shame of being presented in a pathetic state in front of their loved ones who've come to see them. But at the same time, we also saw that visiting day and visits and communication with their loved ones gives an outlet to prisoners to express their suppressed emotions, which may be unacceptable in a prison environment, and therefore they continue to be events that prisoners look forward to. Another aspect that we covered was about hospitals in prisons, the medical facilities available, and nutrition and sanitation. So we saw that the status of hygiene and nutrition has been described as poor, with doctors being described as brutal and coarse across prison literature. For example, Rasan Thomas, a prisoner, says that how can I eat like this for over a decade, sleep on a thin mattress over a metal bunk, and still be healthy? From the ventilation in the prison cell to the kind of food that is served, all of this is much below par what is guaranteed to them as far as human rights go. Furthermore, this theme gains importance in today's society and today's scenario because given the pandemic and the urgent need to maintain social distancing and using soaps and masks, which are also not properly available in prisons.
The last theme we discussed was of dissociation and association. We talked about how there is a we in prison writers' I. So whenever they write an I, it's almost as if they're referring to a larger community. They're associating to a particular group and write from the perspective of that group. This writing can be at once intimate and political. And the position the writer writes from makes sure that the text is representative of a wider community and not just individual woes. For example, if we have a prison, if we have a prisoner expressing regret over not being able to attend a crucial function in the lives of another loved ones, let's say it's the graduating ceremony of their children or a wedding of a very close friend. This is often seen as representing the larger woe present within the prison, where prisoners miss important events in the lives of their loved ones. In our second episode, we explored the right to write and the legality surrounding uh, writing in prisons. So, regarding the current state of legality of writing from prisons, we first of all explored the question of whether writing is a right or a privilege. We saw that there is some mention of writing material when it comes to writing letters, which is no doubt an important form of prison literature. However, there is a lack of mention of same material being available for people to write, let's say, poetry or fiction or even biographies. We also saw how writing is almost unequivocally categorized as a privilege in prison manuals and by the executive, with the superintendent having the power to take it away at whims. However, it was heartening to see that a lot of judgments by courts uh, has been a lot of judgments by the courts has been progressive and talks about the right to write and the right to express oneself even inside prison. There is a need, however, for a stricter implementation of these judgments to ensure prisoners' constitutional rights are guaranteed.
We then went on to establish what the importance of writing from prisons is, both for the prisoner and the reader. From the prisoner's point of view, the purpose for writing from within prisons could be basic. For example, taking care of their affairs outside the prison, or taking part in legal proceedings and communicating with their legal advisors. But beyond this, it could also be communicating with the outside world and keeping a connect with their loved ones, which again proves to be very important for prisoners, especially ones serving long sentences. Um, Writing from prisons could also be a vent to express frustration and a way to experience catharsis. And so we realized that there are many reasons why a prisoner would want to write from within prisons, and why it's important to give them the right to do that. When it comes to the reader, it's important to read prison literature, and it becomes important for the reader because it informs us of the conditions inside prison. It allows us to hold these systems and hold the government accountable. It is also a way to reverse the system of surveillance that is present right now, and shift the power to some extent, and give prisoners the ability to speak their truth and talk about their experiences within those four walls. Um, we also went on to look specifically at political writing and political prisoners who write from within prisons. And for political prisoners, we discovered that there is an added dilemma, because a lot of these political prisoners have been jailed or have been put in prison because of their writing. And this forces them to often reshape how they write, lest their writing be confiscated or censored, or never reach an audience at all. There is also a constant need to maintain a balance between their personal experiences and the cause that they are fighting for, and the need to mobilize the reader for that cause. The context of prison and writing from within prison walls also creates a position and posits the writer as an anti-hero, freeing them from the victor or martyr narrative, which would otherwise pigeonhole them. And so they are free to speak both in an authentic way about the experiences they're going through, and speak to reform the system, even while acknowledging that the system has to some extent defeated them already. They also constantly want to communicate frankly and honestly about the brutality, but don't want to lose sight of the larger cause for which they fight.
And then we also talked about some problems related to correspondence. Here we identified two key problems. One which arises while writing, and the second which arises after writing. So the problem while writing is many prisoners cannot get writing material in the first place. There may be a strict rationing of the pages on which someone can write, or a strict rationing of the material with which someone can write, such as a pen or a pencil. And in some cases, the material might not be made available by the government, and they might have to purchase it, which again disproportionately affects the underprivileged prisoners, the marginalized prisoners. Now, the second issue is what arises after the prisoner has written what they wish to write. There is a lot of censorship in prison writing. Of course, this is for ostensibly security purposes to prevent leaking to the public any misdeeds of the prison administration and so on. And certain themes are altogether banned. For example, political themes in prison writing.
In the next episode, we talked about key actors in prison literature and also the vocabulary which develops within prison. So the first theme that we talked about under this was about control. So two specific words we dealt with were panopticon and institutionalized. So firstly, panopticon, it depicts an architectural structure which was specifically designed and used for the purposes of maintaining an atmosphere of constant fear and surveillance. So now this has remained a prevalent feature of prison systems across the world, irrespective of the architecture used. For example, the Anda cell in Maharashtra, which is also something we talked about in the podcast. Further, words like institutionalized hints towards the lasting impact that incarceration has on a person, and it stays with him throughout his life, regardless of the period that he spent in jail as an institutionalized person. Then we looked at prison lingo that includes slang, jargon, and cant, which is developed and created by prisoners themselves. And we analyzed the differences between these three from a linguistic perspective. Then we also looked at the role that these three and communication at large plays in the role in the lives of prisoners in communicating with each other and also with the outside world. That is all the officials who are guarding over them and also their loved ones who are in the outside world. Then, when it came to India, we specifically looked at the use of the word zamindar within prison walls, where it was used to refer to the prison superintendent, which reflects the power imbalances between the prisoner and the superintendent, which is characteristic of landlords and tenants in the Indian context. Finally, we looked at euphemism. So, what we found is that there is a prevalence of euphemism and political correctness in the literature written by those who haven't personally experienced prison, but works by prisoners or ex convicts, on the other hand, they give direct and raw accounts of their experiences without using any euphemisms or words to hide the reality of what has happened.
Through our podcast, we have tried to cover the legal, literary, linguistic, factual, psychological, and sociological aspects of prison literature. In doing so, our motivation was twofold. First, as students of law, and more specifically, students of the course on law and language by our beloved Professor Dr. Prasannanshu, we sought to understand the criminal justice system, its stakeholders, which are many, such as the prosecutor, the state, and the victims, but often forgotten the accused, the person put behind the bars. And from that, we wish to understand the importance of writing within prisons in greater detail. Secondly, we also wanted to bring to our audience a view of life inside prisons and how even the most simple and basic rights, such as one's right to express oneself in the form of writing, are systematically denied to not only convicted prisoners but under trial prisoners as well, who are often innocent or haven't been proven guilty, may just be placed there by the state because their writing was dangerous. So, this shows us the various asymmetries that exist within prisons, and prison literature helps us discover these asymmetries and raise our public conscience so that we can hold those in power accountable and advocate for a much more just, humane, and democratic system.
And now, finally, we'd like to make some expressions of gratitude. Firstly, we'd like to thank our dear and beloved Professor Dr. Prasannanshu for all his support and encouragement in our endeavor, and for lending us his precious time and also appearing as a guest on the podcast. His insights on prison literature and the value of writing were truly unparalleled and highly insightful. His construction of writing, his creativity and expression has truly inspired us. And secondly, we also want to thank you, our dear audience, for lending us your ears and staying with us throughout this learning journey. We hope that you've each been able to take something away from this podcast. Pulkit said, it's not only an understanding of prison literature, but maybe some compassion for prisoners, for the incarcerated. As the great poet Geoffrey Chaucer said, all great things must come to an end. And therefore, it is with some tinge of grief that we end our podcast. Thank you.